Welcome to the Lemonade Car Show, brought to you by Onvic and Crown. Today we're talking about EVs and PHEVs and all those fun things. I'm joined by George Iny, the president of the APA, and Neil Vorano. He is the editor of the Driving.ca section with National Post. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Electrics. I'm going to start with Neil for a second, just because, A, you're my boss, and I think technically you're both
Actually,
my boss.
Just because.
Just because. There's a lot of headlines around electrics, and I seem to, you and I know we're in the same boat. We're talking all the time about electrics. We're getting asked all the time. Yet, the kickback is always, yeah, but they only make up 0.000% of sales. Why is there so much noise around them if they don't represent a true mainstream part of the buying public? So as an editor, why? Why do we see so much?
It's a huge hype. Yes, it is. I think a lot of people look at it as the savior to get rid of gasoline and stuff like that. But also a lot of people don't know, or maybe some people do know, the limitations that the technology has right now. And so I feel, at least at this point in time, the hype is completely overrunning the actual practicality of what they are right now. Not just the cars themselves. Cars themselves are actually good, but infrastructure and even the way people would need to change their lives around them.
So why, George, why do we see so much if that's the truth?
Because the public talks the talk. I mean, many surveys have shown that up to 3/4 of respondents say their next car will be electric. And then they go out and buy a somewhat larger SUV than the one they're driving now, or a pickup truck. That's what's really selling through the roof. Conventional gasoline vehicles that are larger and more powerful than the vehicle you're replacing.
So people want to read about hype and they want to imagine the life they're not going to have.
We want to feel good about it, about what we think, but in practice, when it's our money, we're still buying a gasoline vehicle. We recently at the APA tested a number of electric vehicles, and I'd say before you consider what's the best electric car, the real question really is which of the three approaches suits your needs. So there are some very good hybrid vehicles, but these are gas vehicles. You can't plug them in. They have an electric motor, but it's at the end of the day, it's filled up at a gas station. That requires no adjustment in where you park, in your electrical outlet, or your driving range. You have real dual energy vehicles, something like a Chevy Volt, that could run on gas or could run on electric. In those cases, to really enjoy them, you need a place where you can park that has access to power. So often a large apartment building or a condo or someone who parks on the street wouldn't really be able to do it. And those hybrids also don't give you any compromises on range because you just switch over to the other energy source.
How are readers receiving this information? Do you have the hardcore ones who have already switched over? Do you have people really entertaining this? Or do you have people saying, stop putting this in front of us?
I've not heard anything about stop putting this in front of us, but I do believe a wider swath of readers and just like you mentioned, are saying this is great, EVs are the next big thing, we want to hear more, and then they go out and buy a pickup truck, I think the biggest stumbling block is that owning an electric car is not the same as owning a gasoline-powered car. And for some people, that's a bridge too far in that case. And
that's fair, but at the same time, it doesn't mean you could sit on the sidelines. You do have options in a vehicle where there are no compromises. So if you're looking at a Toyota Prius, Kia Niro, maybe its new Hyundai kind of twin, our sense is that you would have to give up very little. You're going to be using about anywhere from 20 to 40% less fuel than you're currently using.
Well, I think there's two things that are going to come into play, though, which is the incentives from the three governments.
There would be no EV sales other than the Tesla, which isn't really, it's a beautiful car, the Model S, but people who bought those were not, they liked the green aspect, but it's really a supercar.
Yeah,
they bought
and they
it.
were going to pay for that anyway.
Right, exactly.
$100,000.
That's what I mean. If BC, Quebec, and Ontario ditch the incentives, the sales that are already there would disappear.
Even half of what they are now.
And the other thing, we've discussed this a lot, the price of gas is the thing that's going to hinge sales. As long as gas is cheap.
For any switch, like if we want to get people away from SUVs and into even just smaller gasoline-powered cars, gasoline price needs to rise. There's no other way, incentives or anything like that, there's no other way that it will make the change,
Won't move the needle.
except for that.
And the other, I could call it a benefit of a higher fuel price, is that it raises the level of all the ships. So it's not just a few people on the margin that are going to a EV. It would be everybody making a more rational choice.
Yes, exactly.
You know, so
'Cause SUVs are
unfortunately,
not
politically, I don't see the
will.
the will for $1.50 a liter gasoline. But
No.
actually, when the gas prices got up to that point, people did either stay out of the market for a while,
Yes.
or they were buying
You
smaller. They
see
went
it
back to smaller cars.
statistically throughout the years. When gas prices rise, SUV sales plummet. So,
Or at this point, because you have other options, you could just stay in a compact size vehicle as opposed to moving up to three-row if you
And
don't
I know
need it.
you've said before, the changes happen literally overnight when gas fluctuates.
If it
will
goes
happen
up
that
quickly,
If
yes.
it goes up, it'll
Yeah.
change overnight. And as soon as it goes back down, we're running back and buying
Correct.
all the Hummers
So
again.
you look at gas prices of last week
Yeah.
for your purchase, it's going to last like 6 or 7 years. So
You
we
once
need
said
more.
the public is an ass, and you were right then, and you're right now. Thanks, George, Neil.
thank you.
We'll be back after this break. Welcome back for more EV talk. We're going to John Raymond, who is at the EV Center with Ron Groves.
Thank you, Lorraine. I'm here today with Ron Groves, who's the Director of Education and Outreach with Plug and Drive. Nice having you again, Ron.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show again, John.
Could you please let us know what Plug and Drive is all about?
Certainly, I can't believe it, John. It's been almost 6 years now since Plug and Drive got going. We're a nonprofit, and our role is public education about electric vehicles. Demystifying this very strange and spooky technology is really important. We've all figured out how to own and operate gasoline-powered cars. We all grew up with them. But this electric car thing is a little bit different for people. And so Plug and Drive was created to bring the cars and the chargers out to events all over Ontario and parts of Canada, actually, so that people could experience electric cars for themselves.
And Plug and Drive is a nonprofit organization?
It is. We're publicly funded, though, and we also have private funders. So TD Bank has been with us right from the very beginning. We've also got Ontario Power Generation, huge supporter. Imagine that, Ontario Power Generation wanting to support electric cars.
Oh, I couldn't imagine that. And what's unique about your organization?
Well, 2 weeks after we opened, we were the very first electric vehicle discovery center ever to be in the whole entire world. And then 2 weeks after we opened, another one opened up in Portland, Oregon. But for the last 6 years, there's been no other organization in the world like us. We're agnostic when it comes to manufacturers. So all around us here at the Discovery Center, you'll find GM and Ford and Mitsubishi and Tesla. We don't care which electric vehicle or plug-in hybrid that you buy, as long as you buy one that has a plug on it.
And I know you have a very good website. You put out a nice pocket directory of the offerings, and there are other things that we will be talking about. Who's buying EVs today?
Well, according to our statistics, and every time we do a test drive, we sign somebody up and we gather some of that demographic information about who the people are who are interested in them. I'm sorry to say that 77% of them are men. And there tend to be older guys like me.
Or me.
I was just, including myself. But yeah, and you know what? If we could only talk to engineers, that would be wonderful, because engineers completely get it, right? You tell engineers love to talk to you about electric vehicles and all that goes with them. The rest of the population, of course, they do want to know about the technology, but of course, in the end, it's a car.
And are these different buyers than traditional car buyers or SUV buyers?
In the very beginning, they certainly were, yes. Certainly the early adopters, when you asked them what was important to them, they would say things like, the environment is very important to me. I don't want to drive a gasoline car anymore because I know what kind of damage it does to the planet. So greenies. People who want to save money. People, when you do the math, you save a lot of money if you drive an electric car.
And also there's significant incentives in Ontario, BC, and Quebec. Do those play truly a role in a purchase decision?
Oh, I'm pretty sure it does. You
'Cause
know,
they seem pretty rich.
here in Ontario, up to $14,000 is pretty rich. It takes a $45,000 car and makes it an attainable low to mid $30,000 car. And then, of course, no more gasoline. So yes, the incentives are important. We hope that the governments continue to leave them in place for now, because those incentives are designed to help bring this fledgling industry into full production.
And do you find that interest is growing, or it's pretty constant since the 6 years that you've been in existence?
The first 4 or 5 years were a bit of a struggle, John, I got to admit to that. Talking to people about cars that went 100, 150 kilometers on a charge, and then there were no charging stations out there, that was a big deal. I mean, obviously, if we were talking about gas cars and there were no gas stations, you'd think Ron had a screw loose. So now, of course, we do have charging stations out there, thousands of them across Canada and hundreds here in Ontario.
And there seems to be some confusion, because when we talk EVs, there are people that keep on saying hybrids, or people that say, well, what's a plug-in hybrid? Would you like to share with us what those 3 types of motive power are?
So the most famous hybrid is the Toyota Prius. 20 years ago, it's been in the market. Can you believe that, John? So they basically, Toyota knew that one way to get extra mileage fuel consumption numbers out of a gasoline engine was to add an electric motor and a battery to it, and that's what Toyota did. But the car didn't plug in. It made its own electricity, but with the gasoline generator on board. So then other EV manufacturers came along and said, tell you what, why don't we put a bigger battery in there and allow the car to go quite a bit further on the battery alone before it switches back to the gas. And so those were the plug-in hybrids. Cars like C-Max and Fusion. The Chevy Volt is the #1 selling electric car in Canada, and it essentially is a plug-in hybrid.
And then we have EVs.
The pure electrics, and beside us here is the mighty Tesla. And I could go on and on about how I think that's the #1, the best vehicle in the entire world, well, electric or otherwise. But having said that, there are many others to pick from now. So
And it seems
Chevy
to be
has the
growing.
Volt. Absolutely. So there's over 37 different models of plug-in hybrid and pure electric car available in the Ontario marketplace from about 14 different car manufacturers, and more coming, as we know.
Oh, wow. Is Canada a leader in terms of adoption, or are there other countries that are ahead of us in our desire to go electrification?
Well, if you live in Norway, apparently there are more EVs in Norway per capita than any other country of the world. But here in Canada, we're pretty much on a status quo with the Americans. About 1% of new car sales here in Canada are EVs or plug-in hybrids. Same goes for the States.
And has that grown?
It has, yes. We have now about 35,000 EVs in Canada and plug-in hybrids, and here in Ontario about 15,000 that have been sold over the last 6 years. But a long way to go.
Ron, we're just going to take a short break, and then we're going to talk about the EV Center. More Lemonade coming up. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show. I'm here with Ron Groves. He's the Director of Education and Outreach with Plug and Drive. Ron, before the break, we were talking about your organization, and I'd like to ask you about your EV Discovery Center. It's something new. I believe you were the first in the world to have this type of facility.
By 2 weeks.
By 2 weeks.
Another one in Portland, Oregon. But yes, for the last almost 6 years, John, we've been standing out in cold parking lots, freezing our keister off, kicking electric vehicle tires and talking to people about electric vehicles and charging stations. But what we really wanted is what every car dealer knows you need to have, and that is a place which is climate controlled, is a beautiful showroom to show off the latest features of all of these vehicles, and somewhere we could really call home, where we could invite the public to come out and learn about EVs. And so we hunted high and low here in Toronto, and we didn't want to be too far north and not get people coming, and we couldn't afford right downtown. So here we are in North York, Finch and Dufferin area, 6,000 square foot showroom. We can accommodate 5 different vehicles in here, and people can come inside and learn all about electric vehicles.
And what services do you provide out of the EV Center?
Well, of course, the biggest one is information. You know, you're going to come here and learn all about each individual car that you might have questions about. But ultimately, everybody wants the test drive, don't they? And I mean, driving an electric vehicle is a different experience. They're smooth, powerful, quiet. And you know, we can't stand here and look at these cars and convey that without actually going for a test
And
drive.
I know you have quite the lineup because I've followed you from different locations, such as Georgian College's auto show.
Yeah.
And there's always a lineup for people to try a Volt or a Bolt or, and now an e-Golf.
We have a great selection from a variety of manufacturers. So GM's Volt and Bolt are here. Mitsubishi's Iny, Tesla, we have one in the showroom. We've also got Ford's C-Max and Fusion, and Volkswagen e-Golf, and BMW i3.
There you go.
So-
But I also understand that you also invite students in from local high schools.
It is all about education, John, and the students are our future. And so we've developed an education program for students. It's about 4 hours long. They come to the center, and through a variety of workshops, which they rotate through at our center, they learn all about how electric motors and batteries work, how electric cars work, charging stations. And then, of course, we take them for a drive in an electric car, just so they can go home and tell mom and dad what they did today at school.
And I noticed that on our desk here, we have some various types of chargers.
Yeah.
I guess that's a very important component to operating an electric vehicle.
Absolutely, and so you'll be pleased to know that all the car manufacturers have agreed on one particular standard at a level 2 220 volt charger. This is the J1772. No more beta and VHS or HD Blu-ray, I guess. But this particular level 2 charger is still hours and hours to charge. And it's great for when you're at home or at the shopping mall.
So this is what you would have in your home or your condo if a condo allowed
Exactly.
electrical connections.
Exactly correct. But
And
if
then
I
this
go on
big-
if I go on a trip though, I don't want to wait for hours for my car to be charged, right? And so this is called the CCS, a combined charging unit, a combined charging system. And you can see it has this one in the top,
Yeah.
but then it adds in the big DC fast charge down here. So this is DC, direct current flowing into the battery.
And
from
how
a-
much quicker is this than this one?
So this is hours and hours, this is minutes and minutes. So depending on the car, anywhere from 25 to 45 minutes to get you to 80% and get you on the road again.
And if somebody wants to put this in their house, what's the approximate cost of?
So these ones, the level 2 start at $800, and there is a rebate, as we've discussed here, on the chargers as well, for 50% of the cost of that and 50% of the cost of the electrician, up to $1,000. This is too big to put in your home. These are big, massive machines, take huge power.
You'd have to be near some sort of power station.
Niagara Falls or something.
Niagara
yeah.
Falls, something like that. How does Plug and Drive see the future of electric vehicles or plug-in electric vehicles in Canada?
I think the world is slowly starting to get it, that fossil fuel is not the way forward, and it's still going to take us many years to wean ourselves off of it. But electricity, especially here in Ontario, is clean, plentiful, reasonably priced, and we actually have a surplus of it at night. And so not just electrification of our cars, but could we also do buses, taxis, trains, all of these things in some cases.
Delivery vehicles.
Delivery vehicles, huge. All those Perlator and UPS vehicles, they do 100, 125 kilometers a day. They could all be electric. And so going forward, we're going to start, of course, here at the center displaying vehicles that people would buy for their own personal transportation. But ultimately, the center could expand and include boats, you know, recreational
Any type of
vehicles.
commercial or other type of application? I guess
Absolutely.
even power walls and things like that.
Yes, now that's a really fun topic. Maybe we should save that one for
For
another date,
another day.
another episode. yeah.
I found this very enjoyable being in your EV center today, but more importantly, I'd like to go out for a ride with you and try a new Chevy Bolt.
Excellent. I think we happen to have one here at the center. We'll get you behind the wheel, John.
Sounds good. Coming up next is Ask the Mechanic on the Lemonade Car Show.
Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show, brought to you by Onvik and Crown. We're back with George Iny, president of the APA, and our mechanic is Brian Early. Hi, gentlemen. We're talking about electrics on this segment. what are some of the special concerns that you're going to have mechanically with an electrical vehicle that is different than what we're currently doing with an ICE engine? I'll start with you,
You're
Brian.
talking about a pure electric vehicle as opposed to a hybrid or a plug-in?
Let's talk both. Let's address both. What kinds of concerns are owners going to have that maybe they didn't anticipate, or just the
Okay,
difference?
Well, I mean, specific to the plug-in hybrid ones, you have two separate powertrains in one vehicle. So you still have the traditional gasoline engine and all of the various subsystems that were in any current vehicle that doesn't have the electric portion. Plus you have the electric side of it, so you have batteries and inverters and electric motors and control systems involved in that too.
Is it a pricier maintenance?
If components were to fail, it would be.
Up until now, our only field experience of any consequence is Toyota with their hybrid system, and it's been extraordinarily reliable. The Prius is a very low running cost vehicle, even though it has two drive systems. The electric one doesn't need any serious maintenance until the vehicle could be up to several 100,000 kilometers before the batteries fall off.
So that's not as scary as it sounds.
No, although it is amazing when you look at some of those hybrids, how much is going on under the vehicle or under the hood. Like, they're fiendishly complex.
It's incredibly complicated, yeah.
And then a pure EV is another story, because that's a repair shop with no fluids dripping. You could have like a clean floor.
You
There's
still
almost
have antifreeze.
yeah,
There's
coolant.
still antifreeze because
Right.
those systems have to be cooled. There is still a cooling system even in electric vehicles.
Right.
What's the difference when we're talking about brakes? Because the brakes work differently, and they must be maintained differently.
Well, you have an additional braking system. So
Yeah, like one of the main reasons why hybrids are more efficient is they're recapturing. You can't destroy energy, you can transform it. So brakes turn your motion energy into heat. Well, instead, with an electric vehicle or a hybrid, it recaptures that electrically and puts it in a battery. So you can use that energy again to go later. That's the magic of them. The flip side is the brakes don't get exercised, and
the regular brakes,
Yes,
because it
the
also
actual
has a
functional ones.
conventional brake rotor with a caliper on it as well.
And if they're not being used,
That's right. Well, I mean, under moderate braking, it can do it electrically, but if it needs to really slow down aggressively, there isn't enough ability electrically to do that, so it has service brakes just like anything else does. But yeah, in some hybrid circles, it's a badge of honor to have the brake rotors completely corroded because you haven't been using them. Look at me, I'm hypermiling.
you know some weird people.
Yeah, well,
That's the badge of
Early adopters,
yeah.
weird
early
people.
adopters. Yeah, no, I've spent some time with hypermilers, and they're their own breed of people.
But again, the flip side is the brakes don't get exercised as much, and yes, corrosion and that is an issue.
Would ceramic brakes help?
No,
in terms
the
of
brake
avoiding
rotor
corrosion?
itself is going to be the part that corrodes primarily. So, no.
So if I'm going to, let's go to pure EVs, because in the last part, I know that's what Ron was focusing on. Sorry, John was focusing on. If I buy a purely electric vehicle, how am I going to be addressing maintenance schedules and things? What's going to be different? Is it going to,
It's a lighter schedule, there's no question.
Okay.
There's less to do.
Okay.
And you do save, I mean, not just on oil changes, there are other services as well that are not required, especially as the vehicle gets older. The question mark, of course, is what happens to the
I
batteries
was gonna
after
say,
the 8-year warranty is
that's
over.
my next question. What about battery life? What do we expect? I know Toyota it's become not a non-issue, but far less than we
It's
originally
an older
thought.
technology than lithium-ion, which is the current one, the one that we know. And also, the aftermarket has found a way to take used battery packs, take out the bad batteries, recondition the pack, and so the prices, if you were ever to need a replacement, are less expensive than a regular gas engine on many vehicles, or similarly priced.
And as these vehicles have gone generationally newer, the battery technology has improved, but so has the control technology that controls how much is pulled out of the battery and how they're recharged, and that has improved the life of them as well.
So you can't say for sure if the vehicle is widely sold, the aftermarket will develop cheaper solutions when you need them. If there's only a few hundred sold and then it went off the market because it was a temporary product from the car maker, then it could be expensive.
Yeah, some do better than others. I've heard circumstantially that the Honda, the hybrids, their battery packs are not as durable, say, as the Toyota ones.
So a Civic hybrid used is not a vehicle you want to buy because it uses almost as much gas as a regular Civic, and the likelihood of having issues with the battery performance is higher.
And what the owners can do to make it last longer is if you use the level 3 chargers, the really fast chargers, consistently, that's very hard on the batteries and it will deteriorate them much quicker.
Well, that's like a 400-volt charger.
Yeah.
So that's a commercial to keep you going when you're on the road.
Oh, so those could end up being a deterrent.
Yeah, they're detrimental.
Except for Tesla, I
Well,
believe, they have a
Tesla's
different
Tesla's
technology.
their own animal.
Yeah, so those are designed for fast charging. The others, you're probably better off on, let's say, 220 if you can.
But if you were to
And
look
to-
into literature for an iMUV or a Leaf or any of those vehicles, it'll specifically call it out in the owner's manual that repetitive use of that will adversely
Shorten
affect battery life.
Oh, so this needs to be part of the philosophical and political conversation around electrics as well, is that we're talking about wanting all these high charge stations everywhere, but that might not be the best thing for the current technology in these cars. Having it overnight and letting it charge that way
If
could
you
be
want
better.
long distance travel,
Yeah,
there's two ways to do it. One is dual energy,
yeah.
so you use the gas when your batteries are out, and the other really is going to have to be quick charge.
Quick charge.
You're
Okay.
forgetting a third player in the room, hydrogen.
We do not have time to go to hydrogen. We will have to get another segment to do this another time. That's all the time we have for Lemonade, brought to you by Omvic and Crown. Thanks to my guest, George Iny, Brian Early, and to you viewers.